my guest today is David Esposito. He is an experienced healthcare CEO and combat veteran. He has built and scaled multiple healthcare companies in his career, and currently he is the CEO at ONL Therapeutics. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thanks, David, for being on this episode. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So I want to know a little bit more about you and your background and about ONL. Fill me in on what you're doing there.
Heath, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Sure. David Esposito. Right now, I'm the CEO of ONL Therapeutics. So ONL is a mid-stage biotech company focused on some of the large diseases of the eye, like glaucoma and AMD. I can give you a little bit more specifics of the company, but we're based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. My journey in healthcare is a little bit over 30 years. Started off my career in large pharma, in sales, marketing, commercial strategy. Then the back half of my career has been more in the early mid-stage of life sciences, building both diagnostic and therapeutic companies. It's been an exciting journey, certainly where we are today. A great deal of the innovation in life sciences is done in the early stage with privately held venture capital funded companies. And that's where ONL sits today. We've raised successive rounds of financing, Series A, B, C, and most recently Series D round of financing to run large phase 2 clinical trials with our lead compound. Teams are working hard, and we're hoping to be able to, at the end of the day, prove that our technology can really help patients see better across a wide range of diseases of the eye.
So give me an idea on the science behind what you're doing, because I scratched the surface on your website, but give a little more detail about what it is specifically that you're developing for.
Sure. So we have a therapeutic. It's a small peptide that's injected into the eye, very similar to conditions. If the audience is familiar with wet AMD, many times those patients get an injection of a therapeutic in the eye. So we're a small peptide. It's designed to be injected in the eye. Our drug blocks this receptor called the FAS receptor, FAS, on the surface of retinal cells. So regardless of the disease or stress of the eye, things like glaucoma, age-related macular degeneration, those stressors or disease cause that receptor, the FAS receptor, to be activated, and that triggers the death of retinal cells. And unlike skin cells where they regenerate, retinal cells in the eye, once they're dead, they're dead. There's no regeneration. And so our drug, ONL 1204, small peptide, blocks that FAS receptor. So regardless of the disease, the drug, by blocking that receptor, protects them, keeps those retinal cells alive, quiets the inflammatory response that often accompanies disease state. So we see there's large application of this FAS receptor technology to be able to protect retinal cells, ultimately protect the eye to be able to see, transduce light and see just like you would expect it to be.
Right. Interesting. And I think I read that glaucoma is one of the conditions that you work with as well, right?
It very much is. So
that's probably one that people are most familiar with, right?
Very much so. Actually, since we touched on my career, I started off over 30 years ago selling a drug called Timolol or Timoptic, a brand name which lowers the intraocular pressure in the eye.
Actually, glaucoma. I've heard that before, guys. My mom had glaucoma, actually. Yeah. So that was, and it's definitely a way. It's a maintenance thing, because I don't think glaucoma is actually something you can cure. It's something that you have to maintain.
Today's technologies, ours included, are trying to slow the progression of glaucoma that way. There are some, gene therapies and cell therapeutics that may potentially revamp things, but most of the drugs today are certainly on just slowing the damaging progress that a disease like glaucoma does.
Right. Okay, so interesting though. Like, how did you go from civil engineering to this?
Well, the short answer is I wasn't that great of a civil engineer. But the other answer was, I always, I was active duty in the Army. I got a civil engineering degree from West Point. I was in the Army infantry for a while, so. At the time when I moved off of active duty, the life science industry always seemed to be a high growth industry. A lot of the large pharma companies were really at that time ramping up their commercial efforts towards large drugs. The statin class of therapeutics was a part of that as well. And so, I had at least a disciplined scientific background in civil engineering, but really saw the growth opportunities in life sciences, and was fortunate enough to come on board with a company, Merck, one of the large pharma companies, to begin that journey. But I think the truth was I was never that sharp of an engineer, and tried to do the best of it just as a hustle and salesperson for a while.
And that wasn't fair. You do have a Bachelor of Science as well. I just thought it was funny that you had my colleague has forestry and he's a forestry engineer, and he lives in the marketing world. So I constantly want to ask him, "How did you get here anyway? I don't understand." Anyway, that's great. And so somewhere along the way, you kind of transitioned into be more of a business leader, and you've been a CEO a couple of times. You've helped with a couple of acquisitions. So at what point did you see yourself transitioning from into that aspect of the business?
No, it's a great question. I think, part of my journey of leadership and growth, certainly at West Point, my time in the Army, you've kind of, learn to follow. That's kind of the first principle. Learn to follow, be useful, get work done, and then continue to develop, to grow, to perhaps lead teams and individuals. So that spark of leadership and the journey certainly began at my time at West Point and then in the Army. And then when I got into the corporate world, that similar kind of thought process. I enjoyed being an individual contributor in case of sales and in marketing, but also seemed to really find purposeful work in developing people individually and then collectively to help a team accomplish tasks. And so I had good foundational training in a large company like Merck, where good entry-level management training and then scaling that up, I always felt was just a tremendous learning experience. But I kind of really desired to see of some real purposeful work and trying to see people grow and develop and build teams. And so that brought me to the journey of the leadership that I'm on today, when I ended up transitioning out of a large pharma company and got into more early stage biotech. I think that's where the other dimensions of leadership, of not just leading teams to execute upon a common mission, but the dimensions of, all right, how do you really build a team from scratch? How do you finance a team? How do you finance technology? So my own leadership journey, beyond just being a very intentional people manager, when you start to scale businesses, it puts your leadership to the test. And I've developed a few skills that way. Also learned from a couple mistakes in my journey as well.
All right. Well, mistakes is where we do most of our learning. So let's tap in. Share some of your learnings in there. Like what kind of challenges did you face that you would consider as those mistakes, that you worked through?
Yeah, I think, the side of it is when you move into the early mid stage of life science and biotech, one is the science is tough. So even in the greatest of circumstances, sometimes the diseases are so complex, the science or technology is just not up to the task at that time,
Right.
and that's a part of it. But I do think some of the principles around leadership and team building that I can recall. So most of my journey has been in first-in-class, innovative, either therapeutics, diagnostics, or med devices. And I think there's always this healthy tension between the actual technology and the science should trump all other things, regardless of perhaps customer understanding and appreciation or market fit, those kind of terms. And I think we're one particular company that I was a part of and working with, there was a really clear miss in terms of the technology was brilliant, what it did. This was a disinfectant technology for hospital-acquired infection. Brilliant technology. The challenge of the fit in hospitals where turnovers to beds are trying to get 30 minutes, not 2 hours, difficulties in operationalizing that technology. And I think those those challenges not addressed in a timely fashion, what usually happens is you burn through money quicker than you think, and as opposed to pivoting that technology to perhaps a more effective use case, you end up running out of gas sometimes. And the challenge with some of those, when investors lose a little bit of faith in funding it, the money dries up and the technology could have been great, but perhaps not applied in the right case. I think that's, one example. The other one is some of these are like classic business school examples, right? The
Yep.
technology is great, but doesn't quite fit. Another
Right.
one where, the technology can actually apply almost everywhere. And you struggle to make very disciplined choices on
Hmm.
where to go first, a beachhead market or something like that. And
Right.
again,
Right.
at the end of our day, our world, you burn time and money, and there's never enough of that.
Well, and ONL seems very niche. Like it seems like it's a very it's and it's not a huge company either, too, right? It's a nice sized company. How many employees do you have there? Or-
Sure. So we have 15 employees full time. Most of them are here in Ann Arbor. We also have some remote. We also work with about kind of double that in terms of consultants that support us and
Sure.
we work
Yeah.
full out contract. Yeah,
But that's
for
a
sure.
nice size for managing people, managing scalability, and things like that. Because what you were talking before, I mean, healthcare typically has so many different avenues. You've got you're managing not only patient or outcome for the end user, but the providers and the suppliers, and then you've got investors, and so there's it's a complex system to try and navigate, especially as the leader of that organization. And then the larger the company, the more complicated it gets. But you brought up a good point. It's about, you're talking about working with people. I mean, this is also the people industry too, right? And you can't do anything without the people. And so, my impression of you is that you've got a great way about you with communicating with people. It seems to be your skill set is working with people and building teams. So how do you infuse your own personal philosophies around leadership and people management into your day to day?
Well, Heath, hey, thanks for the kind word. I appreciate it. I think I've, tried to be a student of leadership over time and really understand from, a few shortcomings and how you adjust and go forward. I do think at the end of the day, some of the classic things that most people would talk about. Well, where's the team headed? Where's that really direction? Whether it's goals, objectives,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, in my world and early stage today, it's you're being funded to execute upon a certain plan. So let's define that as clearly as we can, so that individuals and teams know where we're headed and can make work plans towards it. I think those basic things are a part of it. I think the other piece, though, to make it really sustainable is you really want each individual on the team to see what their role, their particular function, their objectives, how they matter to the delivery of the team's objectives and how
Mm-hmm.
that rolls in broadly to the company's objectives. So even though we're a small team, but the principle holds true for big teams as well, to really build and sustain energy in a world that's really difficult. Science is
Yeah.
difficult, all the things, but to really make sure how each individual of the team sees the importance of their role as part of the bigger picture. And then in our world, defining that bigger picture, our vision for our companies to help patients see the future. It's like a purposeful rallying cry.
Right. Right.
And you
Right.
can build some energy when I think people understand, all right, this is what my tasks are. Boy, it ties to this bigger team's projective and where we're going. You hope with some good encouragement, pats on the back, and a couple kind of stirring conversations if we're coming off the rails, keeps people excited to keep going in the journey.
Mm-hmm. Right. And particularly like when I saw you were kind of working on, had done some mergers or a couple acquisitions along the way. So, I mean, that kind of even comes in as really important when you're trying to transition from into almost a completely different entity for an organization. And how do you kind of manage that sort of morale and shift in perspective?
That's well, great question, and it's tough. It is, when even in our own journey in ONL and maybe a couple of my prior companies, they originate with three or four folks around the table, and then all of a sudden you're 10, that's like 2 to 3x the size, and now
Yeah.
50,
Yeah.
so even that has this aspect of, hey, I kind of like it the way it used to be feeling. But certainly in the transactions you're describing and the acquisition of a team and the company and the technology, the practical side of it is in each of these stages, whether it's raising money or through an acquisition, uh, the company does in essence get absorbed by the others, and quite frankly, not everybody makes the journey.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah.
certain leaders, there are team members that just have a much more purposeful fit in super early stage. Some have a better fit in terms of large companies. The resources are there, and having gone through a few of those, I think there's the truth of the matter is some stay in the journey because it's kind of what they see
Yeah.
is good work, and others don't. And I think part of it, though, I just emphasize there still is that nature of moving the technology forward, and sometimes that gets lost a little bit in a large acquisition, and that's why I think you hire a lot of folks to help support kind of that change management as things
Yeah.
come down to the team.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. That's a good point. And innovation and technology just seems to be moving faster and faster all the time. So, that challenge probably is ongoing for a lot of organizations,
I
particularly
think
now.
so. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
the practical side too, Heath, of my journey of 30 plus years in this, it was not, it was a common practice where most of at least drugs, diagnostics, and devices originated from large companies. If you looked at portfolios 30 years ago, 70-80% of them were in-house developed
Right.
technologies. Over the
Right.
course of 20, 30 years, it's flipped where
Yeah.
70 to 80% of marketed products have been acquired by private company, large companies buying private companies. So
Right.
that pace of innovation
Interesting. Yeah.
is fast on the outside, and I think the large companies have seen that reality, and that's why they've really ramped up a lot of their business development activities.
Is that because the R&D stage is maybe a little bit easier to do in a small, in a small environment rather than in a large organization like that? Is it easier to kind of do it started in that spot and then go big afterwards?
It's a great question. There is some speed to the development of a small company, but you need a lot of resources to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I really think in many ways it's become it's a risk sharing principle. Where
Yeah.
I think large companies with a large base of existing portfolio are placing their bets more dollars on scaling that existing portfolio, and then look opportunistic for deals on the outside, and they're shifting that risk of development onto venture capital and privately funded businesses. I would also say too especially in today's environment, the early stage innovative discovery work done in most of the academic research centers in the U.S. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of that is NIH funded grants that
Right.
brilliant professors and researchers do. And those dollars are essential to have that bedrock of
Right.
scientific discovery done. And that's an important part of the ecosystem as big companies perhaps shifted risk to venture funded stage companies like
Right.
ours. There still is that baseline level of discovery work that the NIH in my world today still funds a lot.
Yeah, it's the seeding. It's the seeding ground, right? It's where the ideas get planted, and you find out what sprouts, and take it from there.
Very much so. And it's,
Hmm.
and even, a couple of the companies I mentioned or talked about that technologies didn't get to market, even where we are with ONL, we have a long journey before getting to a marketed approved product. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
truth is a lot of these technologies don't end up getting commercialized because of a variety of reasons, but the learnings that companies make, there's a great deal of sharing those learnings to hopefully accelerate discovery down the road. And that's an important part of it.
Well, yeah, and I think the source of from what my conversations I've had is that the people that are originating some of these ideas, or they're at the kind of ground level of research, and the the foundation of their vision is always about outcome, making change and positive change in people's lives. And I think that's kind of where it always starts. And then in your experience, how do you manage from from going from that into large business and maintaining a sense of that sort of positive human outcome?
Well, that's terrific because you can get lost in the day-to-day grind of whether it's one side of the business raising capital, another side of the business managing that capital, another side the complexity of the science. We with ONL try to consistently over time discuss that we're still on this journey specifically to alleviate pain and suffering of disease, specific in our case to eyesight, and help patients see the future. It's important for teams and leaders and companies to consistently make that connection. We're very fortunate. The founder of our company, David Esposito, is a retina specialist at the University of Michigan. He still sees patients in clinic every week.
Oh, wow.
So that reconnection with the reality of the journey we're on is very important because it can get lost in the intensity of the day-to-day grind. And to your point, I think it's one of the more helpful anchors during tough times to remind everybody where we're going, why we're headed that way. And David does a great job of bringing that to the table just about every day to the team when we need it. But it's important for teams to reconnect that way, no doubt.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. It's interesting that when the people are still at ground zero or front line and communicating with patients and getting that immediate feedback it's critical. Yeah. So have you been in with ONL since day one?
No, I've not. I joined ONL about 6 years or so ago. A company that I was leading, a cancer diagnostics company, to your point, got acquired, and it was a short transition. And some institutional investors in that company, Armune Bioscience was the name of it. They had also invested in ONL. ONL was looking for a leadership change. So the company's about a little bit over 12 years old. And I've, about maybe halfway through that journey, been a part of it. The company had some, really amazing preclinical or animal data at the start. And then we needed to raise some capital to get into humans. And so the company's grown since that. And it was a handful of people, just a small handful of people around the table when I first came on board.
Oh, right on. And where is it at now? What's kind of the future of ONL? Where is it headed?
So we continue to make progress in the clinic. So that is task number one, to take our lead compound through these larger phase 2 clinical trials across a number of indications. You or your audience may be familiar with phase 1 is usually safety. Phase 2 is when you determine safety and efficacy. And then phase 3 studies are when you ultimately are going to file those with the FDA for your labeling for commercialization. So we're still in that middle swath of phase 2. And then we need to raise some capital to fund phase 3 studies. Typically, to the conversation we had earlier, a lot of times the big companies do look for technologies in that phase 2 to phase 3 range. And so we just hope, our task is let's just move the technology forward in the clinic. If the science is great, we hope we have the ability to raise the capital to run the next study or attract the interest of others.
Right. So at this point, the drug is actually is it being used at all at some
in clinical trials only. So it's not an
Yep.
approved product. So
Right.
we're in phase 2 clinical trials. And
Right.
these disease states, we're in age-related macular degeneration, have the potential to get into a phase 2 in glaucoma. These are large, slowly progressing diseases. So typically these studies are 2 to 3 years in the making when you think about enrollment and concluding the trial. So it's a long, slow journey to make a difference on these.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. And so at this stage in business, then where do you focus your, I was going to bring up another conversation about how another noisy space in the world right now is marketing, and it's changing probably almost as quick as healthcare is. And I think it's quite mind boggling for a lot of people. Is that something you guys are struggling with there? Because you're not marketing direct a product per se, but you are trying to sell an idea and a concept, right? So how do you manage and navigate yourself through the noisy world of marketing and growth?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. Even though we're not, commercialization and thinking about traditional marketing, you're exactly right. We have study sites who we need to present a compelling story around our drug and the study we've designed for those researchers, not just the investigators, their clinic staff, and then ultimately study participants, patients coming into the trial. So there is an element of how do we market to them an effective message, and all the tools that we see today, social media, the variety of omni-channel approaches, we take that as a team to think about that. We're not quite on the sophistication of AI generated hits. It's still very personal and touches with regards to clinics and sites. But those principles of, what's the the value driver for somebody to participate in our study versus other studies? It's a competitive space. So we certainly use many of those tools. It's just a little bit more hands-on, and also have to be very measured in the claims of participating in our study, that this is still experimental medication, and we need to highlight the risk as well as the potential benefit for patients and the study sites.
Interesting. Yeah, actually, I never would have considered that you have to actually find people to participate in your studies, and so how do you actually attract them? And
it's a big deal, Heath, because we're putting an injection in the eye. You better bet we better have our story tight on it. But it's an important part of it. In addition, maybe the other side of it is we still have to raise capital to these. So there's certainly how do we approach venture capital, funding sources, how do we market
attracting
to them?
investors?
That's another part of the wheel as well.
Yeah. And also, I mean, you're building up to eventually at some point having a product that goes to market. And then at that point you'll have all that built up behind you to support that. Interesting.
We do get a chance to perhaps maybe optimize the message a little bit now before that kind of work. And a lot of it, at least in our world, these are first in class therapeutics, different mechanism of action. So they work differently than other drugs. So those become the underpinnings of a commercial marketing message when you eventually hopefully get approved down the road.
That's right. Right. That makes sense. What's affecting your day-to-day right now? Like what's impacting you, in the company in today's world?
I think, that the near-term work is that, we fortunately secured a large Series D round back in the fall. So the focus now and the challenge is, all right, let's make product. Let's get study sites up and running, get the regulatory pathways. We're running this trial in the US and Europe and Canada. And so make sure the regulatory filings are timely. We're answering the appropriate questions, moving all those to execute on the trial. So those are the big day-to-day topics that the team is addressing to make sure we can execute the trial well. I think the broader, hey, what is the 3 to 5 year journey for ONL and what are those challenges? I think they're always about securing capital for the next round. So that's an important part. The public markets play into that. You'll see, all the topics we hear about tariffs and where's medical funding coming from. All of those things, near term for us, we're focused on executing the trials, but you betcha we're picking our heads up and saying, all right, what are we going to see in the years to come to best position the company to move the technology forward? So those become a little bit more strategic choices over time. But it's always a balance. We got to deliver in the near term to even be at the stage to have those conversations.
Yeah, it's a tough spot, I'm sure, to be in, to be not quite ready to put it out there, but still there's something there that you've got and you want to get it out, but you're not really ready to put it out there. And it's almost like, let's get this going.
Right. Unfortunately, we're not just flipping on a website. This has got a lot of stuff tied to it.
There's a lot of cogs in that framework. That's great. Totally. How about you? How do you what kind of inspires you every day when you to come there and take it to the next level every day?
No, it was a wonderful question. I think, one is it is purposeful work. When you get really into it and realize, all right, there are patients who are on a slow path to blindness. And you realize that that's one of the biggest fears of patients. Being a healthy living individual and losing sight is a big fear. And so
Hmm.
that kind of purposeful work to try to make a difference is very energizing. And to see the team that I'm surrounded with have the kind of energy to go after that is it's a reason to kind of run the work and get the work done. It's very much that way. And having at least now a little bit of sense of a 30-year journey, you kind of see that those efforts of the team and the technology can make a real difference in the lives of patients. And that's just a wonderful journey to be on. It's certainly not without its hiccups. I mean, we, like any early stage company, you get a fair share of gut punches that come out of nowhere sometimes, and
Yeah.
you got to wrestle with them, figure it out, and some of those come down to financing or the product we're developing. But that, it comes with the territory, and you try to, just like everybody else, you dust yourself off and keep marching towards that long-term vision. It's really a wonderful journey that we're on, and the team is terrific and energizing. It's just, it's also, there's no easy days in this world. All those problems have been solved already.
That's great. Well, you answered my next question, which was some advice for people that are in your shoes, or in your particular stage of business growth. And I just wanted to check in and see if was there anything else that you wanted to say or share with the audience that you wanted to kind of put across.
Well, Heath, I want to appreciate the questions and the time. No, the only thing I would say is, a lot of times people only read about the successful journeys and how it all comes together. The practical reality is any innovation. I'm in life sciences, but whether it's technology, defense, any of these big, complicated journeys on innovation, most of it doesn't make the headlines as being a successful venture. But
Right.
there are good, purposeful people working hard, moving things forward that, at the end of the day, contribute to the greater good. And that's what I just remind the audience about. That just because you don't read a lot about all the great work going on, there's a lot of real purposeful hard work doing really complicated stuff to help us all down the road. And anytime we can pass along a little encouragement to those folks, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's good. But I mean, most people don't know how much is going on behind the scenes, behind every piece of equipment in the healthcare industry, every drug that's administered. Like there's really no concept of what goes on to develop all of that, especially at the pace it's at right now. But I think, I like that you keep bringing it back to why are we doing this, and be re-injecting to yourself why are we doing this? It's for human outcome. It's for making lives better, and it's we can bring it back to a more heart-centered mission of why you're doing what you're doing. Right? What do you think is the next big disruption in healthcare and health tech and life science?
Well, I'll answer maybe one thing that we do see a lot of work with AI and machine learning. Certainly in the tools that in our world we assess eye disease and the progress of disease in the eye. So I think those, and most people would say that, to be able to see that technology emerge, to be able to really identify early stages of disease, and in drug discovery, the ability to see a drug impacting disease sooner than today's technologies is really important, and we'll see some real advances in that. So I'm excited to see that. The only piece I'd caveat that with, at the end of the day, it does become, at least in our world, people leading those innovations forward. So teams got to build it, got to guide it, all of those. And so as much of the excitement around AI and machine learning are coming, I do feel, boy, there's leaders that need to move that forward efficiently. And that's for at least for right now, and what you and I can see, still irreplaceable to the piece of getting the work done.
Yeah, the technology's there. I mean, it still needs operators. It's just like any other tool we've invented over the last couple hundred years. It's like every tool still needs a good operator who knows how it works and knows how to get the most out of it. So it's important to always remember that AI has been, it just pops up everywhere. It's like, and sometimes you don't even know. We'll have things pop up on the screen that says, "Oh, we're going to start taking notes for you," and that's like, I didn't sign up for that. So when we'll have things pop. I was talking to somebody the other day about monitors, health monitors, and about how at some point we'll probably all be wearing health monitors warning us of our impending doom, and based on our genetics, you're more prone to this than that, and what you should do and not do. It's interesting to hear sort of all the possibilities. It's like science fiction from when we were kids, and it's actually all coming to fruition now, which is exciting, like you say, but also we got to be really mindful about where we're going with it. For you, share with me any kind of resources or takeaways that, help inspire you on a day-to-day basis. Like books you read or podcasts you listen to or things like that. What do you do to kind of keep yourself motivated?
Yeah, I think, in the life science field, there's a lot of good resources. Some of the large venture capital firms, RA Capital is one of them, and Andreessen Horowitz, they put out a lot of really good information to help leaders manage companies more efficiently, think about process and that. So I do become a student of some of these marquee firms that want to somewhat give back and afford a lot of that guidance out there. So I do try to stay up to speed with those. I think like most folks, we're always trying to figure out where's the truth in all the other stuff we're trying to find and read. But the variety of podcasts that I think most of us probably listen to, there's a lot of good information out there. But I do think in my world today and where I'm at, I stick to kind of the areas that can help, my business and the team go forward. And that's where some of these really forward-thinking venture firms, General Catalyst, RA I mentioned, Andreessen Horowitz, they put some good resources out for myself and a team like me to be able to learn quickly and move forward and not perhaps repeat mistakes that others may have made.
Right. That's good advice. That's good advice for everybody, not just CEOs, but, for most people in their day-to-day. That's good advice.
Thank you.
I think David, I think we covered just about everything I wanted to go over. So unless there's anything you want to add, I think we can wrap it up here.
Grateful for the time. Thanks a lot. Look forward to seeing however this comes out. And really appreciate the invite.
Yeah, awesome. I'm really glad you we could set this up and have this conversation. Thanks, David.
You got it. Take care of yourself.
Okay, that was a great chat. I really enjoyed talking to David. He has such a wealth of knowledge as a businessman and working in the healthcare industry, whether it was mergers and acquisitions, research and development. He seems to have a handle on corporate culture and making sure that, not only looking after the business, he's looking after the people. And I think, his message about no matter how difficult and complicated the healthcare industry gets or how each company gets, that, it's important to step back, reset, and make sure that people are staying connected to why they're doing what they're doing. And that is making people's lives better, improving patient outcome. And I think that was a great message to take away with. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. So stay tuned. There's more to come. Thanks.